done. The GWW Capes crew is back again for another week in comics, superheroes, TV, and movies. I'm your host, the Comics Kid, Casey, and I'm joined by two co-hosts tonight and a plethora of amazing guests. Let's get right into it. Let's introduce my right-hand man tonight, Tyler. How's it going, Tyler?
Going good, Casey. How are you?
I'm excellent. I'm excited about our guests. It's we have a full packed house tonight. I'm ready to get into this. How's your week been?
Oh, it's been good. You know, I got good.
Just good.
Yeah.
Is Oregon snowing yet? Is it snowing up there?
Like, actually, on Saturday when I woke up, our car was frozen. So that was a first time thing that I had to deal with.
Yeah, I think we hit below 60 degrees for the first time in California this week. So have fun up there with the snow, buddy. Let's introduce our second co-host tonight and new contributor to the GWW.com, Anthony Franklin. How's it going, Anthony?
Oh, everything's going on this end, Casey.
So, Anthony, why don't you give us a little bit of background about yourself, since this is the first time you've been on and we're kind of introducing you to our audience.
Well, comics have always been an interest of mine, and I guess nerd or geek culture in general. I've always kind of been out there throughout my entire life. And I actually just recently finished my undergrad, and I'm going into finishing up my master's degree right now. And I thought, well, I want to kind of get out of the academic setting for a little bit. So I thought GWW would be kind of start expanding my portfolio, kind of getting away from that academic setting a little bit. So I guess I found myself here.
So now we've roped you into this ragtag crew of miscreants. Well, thanks for joining us, Anthony. We're really happy to have you aboard. And now let's get into the nitty-gritty with our guests. You guys know them as the creators behind the Image Comic Wayward, the magical mystery, if you will, set in Japan. We have the writer. You'll know him from his works on such things as Conan and Red Sonja, Skull Kickers. Oh my gosh, I'm spacing now. Of course, this would happen. Samurai Jack, and of course Wayward. How's it going, Jim? Jim Zub, everybody.
Well, thanks for having me on board.
Thank you, and I'm not just skipping over you, but I just want to make sure we introduce everybody at once. We also have with Jim tonight Wayward artists Steve Cummings and Tamra Bonvillain, the coolest last name in the history of this podcast. How's it going, guys?
It's great, thanks.
Tamara, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. You doing okay? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, just barely. If you can get a little closer to that mic, hear you a little bit better. So you guys might have seen Steven's work on such stuff from Grim Fairy Tales to Deadshot, and Tamara is also working on John Flood, a favorite around the GWW office's Ghost Racers, and the upcoming Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaurs. So thank you guys all so much for joining us. Let's get right into it. Jim, why don't you start us off? What was your geeky origin story? What got you into all this?
Into making comics?
Well, yeah, just comics. What was the road to comics? Where did it start? Were you born with a comic book in your hand?
No, the quick version is I got into comics pretty young. I'm sure I read comics before this, but the first comics I remember collecting were the Marvel G.I. Joe ones. I was watching the cartoon and I was reading the comics, and then through that I saw like the ads for Spider-Man and stuff like that, and sort of eventually moved over into the Marvel universe and started heavily reading superhero comics. Alongside that, I grew up just kind of all-around nerd, playing video games, lots of Dungeons and Dragons, and watching fantasy movies. So it's sort of the whole meal deal.
Awesome. So how did you get into writing comics? Was that always the kind of goal, or was there a different path in mind?
Yeah, I didn't actually think that there was a viable kind of career for me writing comics. I didn't see a way into it. When I was growing up, it felt like the only way you could write comics was either if you lived in New York City or if you were like a genius Brit, like Neil Gaiman or Alan Moore or something. And so for me, I my background's actually in art. I started in the animation business because that seemed like something I could dig into, and I love animation cartoons and drawing. And so I started working in the animation business here in Canada, and then as sort of a sideways kind of thing, I ended up working for the Udon studio. They were doing all sorts of illustration and art, animation, and comic-related stuff. A lot of grounding in kind of publishing and in art training and project management, and that led me into comics.
So tell us a little bit about the kind of journey to your first comic. What was that experience like for you?
It was an amazing experience. The first comic I made was actually like a webcomic thing that I did back in 2001. So I was working at an animation studio, and it was kind of a mixed bag experience, and so I wanted to get out my own stories, and so in the evening I just started, I didn't know how to get stuff published. I didn't know anything about that end of the business. So I literally I noticed that there were people online who were publishing more like newspaper-style scripts, like Player versus Player and Penny Arcade and a bunch of the strips that were coming out around that time. And so I really looked at those as kind of like a viable, okay, these guys are putting stuff online and I could do that too. So I just started putting up my own kind of comic story, 3 pages a week that I was doing in the evenings after my day job. And that was my first comic. And thankfully there weren't a ton of people doing that kind of stuff online at that point. And so I was able to make some friends in kind of the community, and I ended up Scott McLeod, the guy who did Understanding Comics and Zot and all sorts of awesome stuff. He reached out to me and said that he liked what I was doing, and that sort of turned into kind of my in.
Awesome. So where did the idea for Wayward? Actually, let's start off with this. Can you give us the kind of elevator pitch for Wayward, and for those who haven't picked up the book of what it's about?
So Wayward is a book co-created by Steve and myself, and it's like Japan. So it's teenagers fighting Japanese mythological monsters on the streets of modern Tokyo. We take the old kind of traditional monsters and mythology of Japan, known kind of collectively as the yokai, and we update them for the modern world. And Steve sort of make sure that everything's kind of set in real places and real neighborhoods in Tokyo. And we bring these monsters into it and have our teenagers kick the shit out of them in cool and dramatic ways.
So let's bring Steven and Tamra into the conversation. Steven, real quick, what was your origin story and then your road up to Wayward?
I grew up wanting to draw a comic, and I had no clue how to do it. It seemed like the hardest thing in the world to do because back then, the internet wasn't the thing it is now, and there was no open information about how you would actually go about, joining the comic industry. But when I was in college, especially when I was in college in Japan, I had no money, so I sat around drawing all the time. And I was trying to do creator-owned stuff, even though that really wasn't working. And a friend of mine in America, he took some of my samples and was going around to conventions showing them to editors. And I started getting offers that way while I was still in Japan. So I moved back to America in 2002, and I started working on a bunch of stuff, a lot of DC stuff, some Marvel stuff. And over time, I ended up discovering Udon and doing, art for Udon pages and illustrations and things like that. And that's how I met Jim. And eventually, we moved back to Japan. And while I'm in Japan, Udon has its 10th anniversary, and my contribution to this, big 10th anniversary book that Udon puts out is the illustration of the girl with the bats surrounded by the cats, and that's the catalyst that led to Jim and I talking about Wayward.
Awesome. That's a perfectly coincidental series of events. I mean, and it kind of culminates in this book, which is uniquely, very much steeped in Japan and the culture and the things around it, and that your explanation of how you guys met instantly answered every question I had. about
Right.
Jim's connection and the things that influence the book from the Japanese culture. So that's our interview for tonight. Thank you everybody for joining us. Real quick, Tamra.
Let's bring Tamara in quick because I know she's got.
Yeah. Let's do that.
Tamra, what's your origin story and how did you get connected with Wayward?
Yeah, well, it's kind of similar to how Jim was saying. I don't remember where I got my first comic, but just as a kid, I had some random comics. And then, I grew up kind of in the early 90s, so a lot of those cartoons, like the Spider-Man, X-Men, or Batman cartoons, kind of explored it more there before I could afford to buy my own comics. And then got into that. Did a lot of art training. I went to the Kubert School. How I met them was through Dynamite. I got put on these Pathfinder covers that Steve was drawing and Jim was writing the story. And so Steve and I were working on some other covers and stuff, and eventually, when they needed someone to come on Wayward, they brought me on board.
Awesome. Yeah. It's and your coloring for this book is tremendous and just lends so well to Steven's art. You guys are a perfect marriage, and obviously it started very early on in your career, and I think it's developed to something really really great with Wayward. Jim, back to you. Back to the kind of the beginnings of Wayward with you and Steven. What was the conversation that you guys had that kind of led to this unusual story?
Yeah, well, what happened was Steve, Steve wanted to do a creator-owned book, and we had sort of talked back and forth. After that, the Udon 10th anniversary book came out, I said, man, that looks really cool. What is that illustration all about? And Steve just said, well, I'd love to do a supernatural story set in Tokyo someday. And I said, that would be cool. I'd write that. And we sort of laughed about it, and off we went. And I guess later that year, I'd launched Skull Kickers at Image, and I didn't realize that would be kind of my calling card, and that the series would really go on. We did over 30 issues, and really kind of established me as a comic writer, and led to a lot of other freelance gigs. So the next time that Steve and I, that conversation kind of came around, it wasn't a joke anymore. When I said, hey, I would write that, or hey, we should do a book together, it wasn't just sort of blowing smoke. It was like, hey, we could actually do something. This could go somewhere. And so it was years later. We're talking a good, oh God, it must have been 2.5, 3 years later. Steve's schedule had freed up, and I was looking for, other opportunities. And Steve said, hey, do you still want to do something together? I said, that would be awesome. And I think I was the one that reminded him about that illustration, and just said, do you remember that piece you did for Vent? We should do something with that. And at the same time, you guys are hearing that?
Who lives next to the airport?
That was kind of amazing. Sounds like something horrific and supernatural is happening while I describe how Wayward came about. Sorry, that kind of killed my train of thought for a sec. So Steve and I chatted, and I had this broader kind of story idea about how we view mythology in the modern world, and kind of the original idea, I guess, in my head was that it would be kind of European mythology sort of centric. But I quickly realized that it didn't have to be. We could do something set in Japan. And Steve and I just started jamming kind of character ideas and story concepts back and forth. And the whole thing really kind of gelled pretty quick after that. I guess we put together the book in, 5 or 6 weeks. And I ended up taking it to New York Comic Con in 2013 to pitch it around.
So you had no connection to Japan before you guys had the idea for the book with Steve?
No, I've traveled to Japan a bunch of times. The Udon Studio does tons of work for Japanese clients and also does translation of art books and manga. They've worked with like Capcom Japan and Konami and Bandai and a bunch of Japanese companies. So while I was working at the Udon studio, I was working with Japanese clients. I'd gone to Japan 3 times. I like anime and manga. Like that was already kind of in my wheelhouse. And then the fact that he was there on the ground and living there, raising a family, made it that much more possible. And that he was driven to want to do it there. I thought, well, this is going to work really well. We're both into this.
So Steve, there's a lot of Japan, very like things Japan that you'd only know if you lived in Japan or were immersed in that culture. How long did you live there?
Well, I'm here now. I've lived here a total of 10 years.
No idea.
Yeah, I've lived here a total of 10 years. I spent part of my college here. My short stint in grad school was here. I've been working occasionally for Japanese publishers and doing other stuff for American publishers while in Japan. So, I guess if you want to do a book about Japan, it's the best place to be.
Yeah, I mean, so this is my ignorance, and please forgive me, but I don't prepare for these podcasts whatsoever outside of reading the comics themselves. So I assumed that Jim was the one that had gone and done all the things in Japan, and I am pleasantly surprised to hear that you're the drive behind the book, and it's your ideas, and that the artist is kind of driving the creator or the writer in this circumstance. When in most cases when we interview a creative team, it's the writer driving the artist. Do you feel that it is kind of a different relationship since the book is kind of your idea essentially?
Well, to be honest, I think we split the idea. But when we're doing the settings, I feel a lot of responsibility to make sure it's right and to make sure it feels right and to make sure it's not that kind of weird Japan that you sometimes see represented in comic books and on TV in America. And so that's really liberating because I mean it's extra responsibility, which always sucks, but it's really liberating because I'm able to go out, I'm able to find what I need reference-wise. I mean, if I want to draw a house and I need reference, I open my window and take a picture. It's that easy. But I'm also able to go to Jim and take things that I think might help the book and might help the story, and I can send him links of things, and I can send him photos of things to try and help him. It's a lot more involved than I've ever worked on a story before. That's for sure. It's very, very different from before, where I got a script and the editor just said do it, and that was the end of the discussion.
Jim, what's the difference? What's the difference in this book and working with Steven as opposed to working on another book with another artist? For instance, Samurai Jack or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously with creator-owned, you're able to bring your own ideas into the mix. So it's been really a collaborative process where I've got broader ideas about the plot and kind of character stuff, and then it's almost like Steve and I are kind of like we're casting because we're setting up, he's suggesting locations that really fit well with the particular team. Where we're talking about, cultural and mythological stuff that we can tie in later on. And then I find sort of different approaches or angles we can take on it from a modern slant. So it's not just a matter of, okay, I've got a story, here's a script, you draw it. It's really kind of a back and forth process where I'm carving out the big picture idea, and then we're individually kind of building bits and pieces into it.
I mean, outside of having Jim there as a constant reference, what other research did you go into writing this book? Because I can imagine it was probably more intimidating for you than maybe some of your other works.
In terms of the writing on it, it is. I mean, it's the most complex thing I've written so far in my career because you've got a real life setting. You're using a real mythology and kind of taking bits and pieces of that. We've got a varied cast, which is a pretty large cast of characters. and they got interweaving kind of plot lines. We're playing with time. We're playing with sort of, you know, reveals and mysteries and a lot of dramatic stuff. So alongside all of the action. So it's a pretty complex story on that front, and that's why it's really nice to have a bounce off of to be able to suggest visual components or cultural stuff, or bring kind of another set of eyeballs into it to be able to really expand on it. And same thing with Zach Davison, who's writing the essay material in the back of each issue. So he's writing all about the mythological stuff. We set the story and kind of where things are going, and then he looks at that and kind of writes about the historical context, or writes about the source material of the mythology to help expand our readers' knowledge about what we're working with.
Tyler, Anthony, you guys have you're so quiet back there.
Well, to make a very sudden left turn, I'd like to talk about like the art and the coloring, just because it's so awesome.
No, you're right on spot. That's where I was going next. So go for it.
I mean that double page spread in the first issue where it's Rory and she's walking outside for the first time and she sees the city, like that's just really awesome. Just in terms of the brightness of her clothes, and just I mean you absolutely killed it on colors. And just I mean when you get to issue 2. And oh my gosh, I can't remember the guy's name. The guy who eats the spirits, like yeah, and just like all the veins, like the lines around his mouth and his arms, and the way they're colored, and it's so awesome, and it's really fantastic.
Yeah, where did you guys decide? Like, what was the decision to go with that kind of style, with a very like cross of like anime and like American kind of animation, with very bright colors and all that? Where was the decision behind that?
Well, the art style is just the way I draw for the most part, but we've kind of dialed it back on purpose to try and make it a little more, American looking, a little less manga looking, because we wanted to avoid people initially thinking it was nothing more than another OEL sort of thing. And the colors, I remember Jim telling me early on he had this idea for the colors, like a color scheme and the way we could use colors, and I kind of liked that idea, so I was happy with the way he described it, which is kind of what you see on the page.
Yeah, the first 2 issues are colored by John Roche, who you guys probably know from Invincible, and he was our original colorist on board, and then his schedule got slammed, and so we ended up bringing in Tamra. She helped out partially on issue 3, and by issue 4 she was she'd taken over for all the coloring. So there was a base for her to work from in terms of the palette, but the vast majority of stuff has been her carving out really beautiful, moody scenes and amazing supernatural kind of effects.
Yeah, one of my favorite things about the coloring is when each of them kind of uses their powers and the color palette kind of changes around them, especially with the main character. I really, really enjoy that. Tamara, where do you find that it's more? Do you find it more difficult to come in after someone else has started the coloring, or do you find that that's kind of an easier road for you to take as you already have kind of a direction with where the coloring needs to go?
It's kind of a mixed thing. Sometimes it's nice to have some stuff kind of figured out, but then in other ways, like some decisions are made that maybe you wouldn't do the same way. You have to find a way that works with what you're trying to do. I mean, luckily, John is a great colorist, so it wasn't like a problem. Just some of the effects, like Rory's threads and all that, are like kind of established, or she is powers. So like I kind of stuck with what the decisions he had made. But then I came in kind of early, so I was still able to make a lot of the decisions as we went along. I was never asked to like try to to copy him or anything, so just kind of did what we had been doing on the covers together. And yeah, so it wasn't really a problem on this one.
I feel like coloring is such an involved process that a lot of people don't understand. Can you kind of go over like the different like runs you have to do with Steven's art to make the colors kind of pop the way they do in this book, especially with those, like I said, the effects when people use their powers and how things kind of glow and that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. I'll try, but I guess the problem is it gets kind of technical.
Yeah, better seen than heard, I guess, right? But I still find it fascinating. So I don't really care about anybody else but myself because I'm inherently selfish. So
Yeah.
please tell us.
So I'll explain if I don't make any sense. Just tell me. But so I'll lay down like the flat colors. I don't know how much you guys know about this stuff. So like we'll just kind of separate everything out by the color that it is naturally first, without any regards to lighting. So I just do that, and then I'll set up a few layers where I kind of like I'll kind of play with adjustments and stuff like that. I'll have like on the bottom I'll have like here is what it looks like when it's covered in shadow, and I'll make it purple or something like that. And then I'll lay a layer on top of that, and I'll take them and I'll tint it like, okay, so there's blue light, and I'll make like a blue light layer, and I'll make like a red light layer or whatever. And then I'll kind of like paint those on top of it. And then I have other adjustments above it that I'll do like a glow. So I'll do like the base rendering kind of first. And then I have like glows that sit on top of it. So it's like I kind of do it in stages, build that up. I don't know if that makes any sense, but
No, it totally makes sense. What's your favorite part of that process? I'm sure there's one besides the end. There's one that you particularly like more than doing the others.
well, I mean, I like the actual rendering. I hate setting it up. I've actually just I just hired on an assistant recently to kind of help me with that stuff, so I don't have to do the more like technical things. Already most colorists use flatters, which do the separations first. Like, we're used to, well, actually, in this case, Jim hires the flatter, but usually I get flatters myself. And they separate everything out. Then you go in, you have to fix any mistakes or like change the colors to fit which the palette is and all that. It's only to separate out sections. And now I've started using assistants, which like I'll give her a template of like pages I've done, and she'll fix any of the colors for me, like not the rendering, but the flat colors. Like she'll fix that. She'll set up the layers that I have, so I can just start rendering right away, or as close to it. But like that's the fun part. All of the setting up is very tedious and it can be kind of boring.
Sounds like I need to get an assistant to do the shitty part of my job, so I can just do the fun part. Well, awesome. Thank you so much. And no, Tamara, very interesting and insightful. I always appreciate the technical aspect because I think that's something that a lot of people, especially comic book readers, don't understand. And it's so easy to critique art and say it's terrible or bad or you don't like it, but they never understand the work and tediousness and depth that goes into creating beautiful images, regardless of the style or whether or not it suits their palette. So I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Anthony, you got anything, buddy?
I guess this is maybe more of a question for Jim, or I guess Stephen, you can weigh in on this too. Jim, you worked on something else like Samurai Jack, where you deal with maybe more of a fantastical idea of Japan, or at least my familiarity with it, what Japan was. I kind of grew up on the animated series. Do you ever find like a struggle in really portraying an authentic world in Wayward that maybe you don't do so much in something like Samurai Jack, or something a little more fantastical? Is there ever like a dichotomy between the two that was ordered?
Yeah, I mean, I've done quite a bit of writing in kind of fictional worlds, so stuff like Conan or stuff like whatever, Pathfinder or Dungeons and Dragons, or even Skull Kickers, my own Image series before Wayward, and doing Wayward has been a challenge because you really do want to do right by the setting, and it is you can't just fake it. You've got to sort of, at least I don't want to. I want to make it feel like it's the real place, and I want to make it feel like there's a thought process behind it. So you try to, you've got a narrative in mind, and you want to deliver on that. But within the context of it, you're trying to put those little things into it. And Steve brings so much of that with the visuals, where he's able to ground it in a real neighborhood or a place or a street or whatever may have you. But above and beyond that, it's also even little things like, you know, how the characters speak or the types of interactions that they're going to have with each other. Do they feel genuine? We introduced a new character in issue 6 named O'Hara, and we contrast and compare her to Rory, who's the character that we're following primarily in issues 1 to 5. And, you know, Rory's an outsider. She's moving to Japan for the first time. And O'Hara is this girl who's grown up in Japan. And they've got different behaviors and different sort of expectations. And so I wanted it to feel like the difference between the two of them. And so, you know, it's not a matter of like cultural stereotyping, but it is a matter of doing the research, reading up on this stuff, watching videos, reading books on everything from like, I read books on everything from like Japanese salaryman culture through to like, you know, kind of business stuff to cultural stuff to tourist kind of stuff, just trying to take in as much of it as possible. And not all of it is going to make it onto the page. The vast majority of it doesn't, but the more research you do, the more material you've got to draw from. And that's true even of the fictional stuff. So when I'm writing Samurai Jack, I literally rewatch the entire show, every single episode, with a little notepad. And I wasn't trying to say, okay, let's rip off this thing, but it was a matter of saying, what feels like a Jack story? How does Jack sound? What is the kind of voice and cadence of a coup or whatever he may be? So it's kind of, I guess research is sort of the truth across the board. Whatever character I'm writing, whether it's my own original stuff that I'm building or client work, I try and give myself as strong a base as possible and then go from there. And not just, it's always going to be filtered through my own kind of priorities, what I think makes a great client story, and what I think is really important about Samurai Jack, but at least knowing what's out there as much as I can, at least then I've got the knowledge to build it.
With Wayward, do you ever find that you work on so many different books? Do you ever find that you accidentally kind of write something in one book that should have been in another book? Like, does Samurai Jack ever drop the occasional F-bomb, and then an editor has to come in and be like, hey Jim, I think this line was supposed to go in Wayward?
No, it's sort of weird. You kind of compartmentalize it. Like you go into different. Ideally, as long as you got time in your schedule, you're kind of placing aside a block of time and sort of getting yourself into the mode. So it's like Skull Kicker's mode or like Samurai Jack mode or whatever it might be. Yeah, I mean, I was writing. I did a Disney tie-in book for Figment, which is based on one of the attractions from Walt Disney World, and that's like this fun, joyous kind of imaginative adventure. And it's like, it's weird. I would write that for a few hours at a time, and my wife is like, oh, you seem like you're in a better mood today. You know what I mean? Or you finish writing Wayward, and you're like a little emotionally exhausted and kind of burnt out a bit, because the characters are on this intense, dramatic ride. It is like, I guess, a bit like role-playing games or acting in that sense that you kind of get into character, and then you're able to deliver something genuine.
Real quick question on Figment, because our other host, Will, is a huge Disney fan, and he has all the issues. And he couldn't make it tonight because he was sick. How much research did you have to do for that book? Because number one, that's a character that you kind of only know if you are kind of steeped in the Disney culture, and then there's a whole bunch of other Disney culture-y things around it that are kind of like, it's really a very kind of niche thing that you're like only into if that's your thing. Like, who Figment is if that's your thing.
Yeah, it's like there are tons and tons of Disney fans, and then like the Disney park fans, there's like a subset of them, and a subset within them would be like the hardcore kind of Figment Journey into Imagination fans. And I didn't realize the extent to which that was true until they announced that I was doing the book, at which point they all came out of the woodwork and followed me on Twitter and started asking me questions. Thankfully, like, I'm a Disney fan as well. Animation, I love animation, and I actually teach an animation history course at an art college here in Toronto. So I've got a love of kind of the overall culture of the thing, but I wasn't a hardcore Disney park fan. I've literally only been to Disney World once and Disneyland once. But I did do a ton of research. They sent me a lot of documentation. I watched the videos. I looked at the concept art. I dug into the original design documentation and kind of made sure that I had as much of a grounding as I could in what was there and what had been done, and then tried to build a narrative and sort of an adventure plot around that. Because an attraction is like a series of lights and sound and video and things happening to entertain you, but it doesn't necessarily have a story. There's no beginning, middle, and end kind of conflict. It's figuring out kind of something that would fit the attraction, but also be like a cohesive story, whether or not you knew anything about the attraction, was sort of my goal. And I'm pretty methodical about this stuff, and thankfully, I was pretty diligent about following what had been established and then building on it. So the fan base responded really well to it, and it went over very well. But it was a really unique experience because I got to work with the Disney Imagineering team, and they were very supportive, and it was a really cool experience all around.
Yeah, I mean, it got high praise around here, and like I said, I picked it up and actually loved it, and I'm saving it for. It's one of those books I have that I save for the little one when she gets older because it's a perfect kind of all age. Yeah, no problem. It's all age, perfect all age book, and she loves the Disney stuff. So, yeah, it's a great book, and I'm really happy that it got made.
Yeah, we just finished up on the sequel, and we're hoping that it does well, and they'll ask me to do more stuff for the Disney crew. They've been very nice. So.
Got to get on that Star Wars train.
Oh yeah.
Put a Figment in Star Wars. So Steven, back to Wayward, and my curiosity. Did you guys ever have a fear that it was too Japanese? Because I know that and this happens a lot in video games, that when you bring stuff over from Japan, it can kind of be a put off to a lot of Westerners. Did you guys ever have that fear and then the need to kind of Westernize it up a little bit so you didn't come across that bridge?
I think you can represent Japan in a way that will come across like that because there's a really big integration here in the popular culture with manga and anime, and you'll see like things have cute characters for no reasons whatsoever. And so when we're doing signage and stuff, my initial instinct was, yeah, I got to do that because that's actually how it is. And Jim wisely stepped in and said, let's avoid that right away because it might feel a little over the top. And I realized if we had put that extra level of detail in, I think it might have taken away a little bit from Rory because it just would have been that much more overwhelming, the Japan. If you visited here, you know what I mean. It's everywhere. It's all around you. And since we have limited real estate with only 22 pages, we wanted to kind of concentrate the reader's view on Rory. But now that we've gotten into it and the response is really good, we didn't really get a lot of that, this is set in Japan, I hate it, or this might be manga, I hate it, or whatever. And so because we didn't get that, I think we kind of have a freer hand, and if we wanted to, we could do that sort of thing.
Yeah, I know when I started reading it, I wasn't initially put off by it, but I was kind of like, oh, I kind of feel like I know what this is going to be. And then it takes this kind of turn, and it takes a long time. Like, it is definitely a slow burn book, and I really appreciate that. Number one, because I don't think a lot of comics get that nowadays. They kind of like have this fear that like, oh, we have the 6-issue like run, and the chances of us getting canceled after that are pretty high. So let's just concentrate on those 6 issues and then go off of that. But it seems like you guys have this long arching plan in place, and it really bodes well for the story and the character building that you guys are doing. And Jim mentioned earlier the introduction of that kind of secondary main character, and I really kind of love the way you guys choreographed that and kind of set it up just like the first issue was, and kind of did it beat for beat the same way. It really shows that you guys kind of take care of this project. How far advanced have you guys been planning this out, and was that kind of stuff all planned out from the beginning, or you kind of just have these ideas and then run with them down the line?
We have talks about that, and Jim is always telling me his master plan, and I think he's had it more or less roughed out from day one.
Yeah, it's something where the overall story is kind of built, so I know what we're heading toward, but I never wanted to like choke off any kind of innovation and close down the opportunity for us to discover, things within the story. So the starting's all really built tightly, the ending's built pretty tightly, and then the middle is kind of variable, where we can change elements up, or we can get those kind of nice creative happy accents where we're able to build on cool things or realize that there's more stuff that we can explore. And that's been a ton of fun, where because the concept is really broad, especially once you finish the second story arc and you look at it and go, oh, this has all kinds of different permutations, we started to get excited about different ways we could explore it or the possibilities. You know, as long as our readership is strong, I feel like we've got a bunch of areas we can kind of dig into and show people different aspects of Japan and different aspects of mythology as we move forward. So there is a plan. It is built, but I don't want it to be like this overly kind of cemented structure that's going to be so absolute that we're not able to kind of play with it or you know, get a little spontaneous when it works well.
Yeah, I think that's for the best in the most cases, because then you get kind of set in stone, and then you have this issue where you have a problem where you get to the end and you have to kind of figure out an ending real fast. So yeah, I think it's always best to be kind of flexible, and it shows kind of in the way Wayward kind of plays out, that you guys do have a plan, but things are still kind of up in the air. And I love the kind of the air of mystery around what's happening, and then kind of that big moment at the very end of Volume 2 where we kind of everything kind of comes together. And you're kind of struck by like, oh shit, finally, like now I understand. So,
I think what's been fun about it is like sometimes I think a few, you know, some of the readers, they come and they're like, oh, I wish you'd, you know, I want to know what this is, and it's like, great, that's the whole point of a mystery, is to keep you excited and, you know, building, and you can hold that for only so long, but even still, I didn't just want to spell it all out right from the get-go. I didn't feel like it's that kind of a story. And I also didn't want characters just constantly info dumping each other about things. I think it's more important to kind of be like emotionally in the moment and then figuring out how all these pieces fit together as we go along. Because that feels, first of all, like a more genuine experience for these teenagers. And second of all, I think it's more exciting for people to realize that things connect together instead of having it always explicitly told to you.
Yeah, I think it's funny that you mentioned the info dump, because I was actually kind of waiting for that page. I was like, all right, there's going to be a page somewhere where a character comes in and then explains everything, and then my anxiety will finally sit down and I'll be able to move on with this story. But nope, never happened until like I said, that final page of Volume 2.
One of the things we've enjoyed doing is kind of playing against people's expectations. You keep expecting the mentor character to come in and Obi-Wan the place and just sort of say, oh, this is what it's all about. Or you expect, okay, they're a team now, and they're going to pick a leader, and they're going to go on specific kind of missions, and they're going to all hang together. And you're like, well, the end of the first arc, you know, we blow up the building and separate the team and mess it all up. Like, that's the messiness of the situation. It's never ideal. They're not kind of in that perfect spot. It's always this kind of tumultuous thing, which kind of feels like teenage life to me anyways.
Yeah, and it kind of tunes, I mean, it fits the kind of plot and tone of the story, where the destiny's never like set in stone, and it can always be changed and manipulated, and it's all very magical and mysterious. So I think you guys are just totally nailing it. Anthony, Tyler, do you guys have anything else before we gotta say bye to Jim and the rest of the gang?
One thing.
No, go ahead.
And we've talked on this briefly, but you talk a lot about this difference between an Eastern and a Western audience. And with Wayward, you know, choosing certain things that may or may not appeal. When this eventually gets published in the West, do you feel that even some of these things don't fully translate? That, you know, you do all this research and you find all these things out, and you put what seems to be a lot of research and depth into this work. Do you feel even that some of this may not fully translate to a reader like me who hasn't experienced Japan?
Right. Well, and that was one of the reasons why Rory is the touchstone character in the first volume, because we wanted to give people a way in. That if it was literally just Japanese people talking about what they already know, like, they wouldn't do it. It would come across so awkward. You get one of those terrible story moments where they say, well, Bob, as you know, we are, you know, monster slayers, and these creatures have existed for, you know, thousands of years. Like, stuff that you would never say to each other. And so having Rory coming in and then learning about this stuff gave us a bit of an in to inform the reader while we inform you while we inform her at the same time. But it also is a way. It's part of the broader story of Wayward, is also kind of her as an outsider and the effect that she's having on kind of the whole supernatural tapestry there within Japan. So it has multiple purpose there. On top of that, it's like I don't know. There were times when I sort of looked at it and I said, okay, this is a very Japanese concept that we're working with, but equally, I don't want to talk down to the readership. Like, I figure you can't make a story for everyone. You've got to make a story that you as a writer are going to enjoy and you as a reader wanted to read. And so I'm like, okay, we're doing Japanese cultural things. It is a story about the country and about these creatures. I'm hoping that the art and the drama will bring you in regardless of whether or not you know this stuff. But if you have no desire whatsoever to read about Japan, it's going to be a harder sell. I get that, But also, it's one of the reasons why that kind of sales pitch that we had of like Buffy in Japan, because the Buffy is not, they're going to be doing exactly what the Scooby Gang did in the Buffy show, but that kind of attitude, that mixture of drama and humor, that mixture of action and teenage angst, I felt was like a really good descriptor. And so if you like Buffy, you will probably really enjoy this, and you're willing to take a chance on maybe some of the stuff that you don't know culturally because you're going to attach yourself to the characters.
I would argue to say if you like Buffy, you'll probably love Wayward.
Yeah, and we've seen that. Quite a few people said that was a really great tagline that brought them in the door. And then they'll say to me, they go, it's not really like Buffy. And I'm like, no, it's not. Like, we don't follow the story beats. But in terms of an attitude, or in terms of if you like this, you'll like that, I think it's a good way in.
Tyler, do you have a question?
No, I mean, you guys have covered everything I would have asked anyways.
Usually happens in this circumstances. All right, Jim. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Well, we know you have to get out of here. Steven and Tamara, do you guys want to stick around, or do you guys want to head out too? It's totally up to you guys. We're just going to talk about comics and chat with you guys some more if you guys will stick around.
I got a few more minutes, but not too long.
Cool.
Jim, thank you so much for having me. I deeply appreciate it. I hope, obviously, your listeners check out the book. If they want to find out more about Wayward, or if they want to see some tutorials about writing comics, they can check me out at jimzub.com, JIMZUB.com.
And where else can they find you and the book?
Most of that info is on my own website, and there's all the links there, and Amazon and download links and stuff. And I'm also on Twitter at Jim Zub. Nice and simple.
Thank you so much, Jim, for joining us. We'd be happy to have you back anytime you want to come on. You just say the word, my friend.
Thank you so much. Take it easy, guys.
Thank you. So, Steven, since we'll go right into our next segment, I'll just ask you and Tamara. Steven, what comics are you reading lately?
I love this comic book. It's a small press one called The Knights at the Dinner Table. It's about role-playing games. People who play role-playing games and how ridiculous they are. I love it.
Can you give us a little bit of breakdown of the book and what you like so much about it?
The book is by Kindred Company, and it's about this group of friends who get together every week and they play a fictional version of Dungeons and Dragons called Hackmaster, and Hackmaster's turned into a real game since then. And it's amazing. If you've ever played D&D, then you know the people who are playing this game. Like, all these people who play D&D for some reason turn into a couple of like stereotypical people, and they're all represented in this comic. And when you read this comic, you can remember when you played a game or an adventure and this thing happened, and it's hilarious. The artist is Jolly Blackburn. He's the creator and artist, and the art is, by American comic standard, it's kind of minimal, but that's what makes it work so well, because literally, when you play D&D, you're a bunch of people sitting around a table. So that's what the art is a bunch of people sitting around a table. And it's fun. It's hard to describe how fun it is until you actually read it.
And who is the publisher on that? Sorry, I think I missed it.
It's Kinzer and Company.
Kinzer and Company. Yeah, so check that out. Thank you so much, Steven. Do you ever find that you get upset or a little pissed off when maybe a comic creator or something has an idea that you wish you would have thought of?
I have that moment where I see like a new comic, and I think, crap, I actually had that idea, but instead of getting excited or upset, I'm excited that I at least get to read something similar, because it's not like I have the time to do it.
You're too nice, my friend.
Yeah, well, something like that.
Tamra, what comics have you been reading lately?
I buy a lot, read a lot less than I buy.
I'm the same way. No worries.
Yeah. I feel like I'm pretty predictable. I get a lot of the kind of bigger Image books that everyone's reading, like Saga, Walking Dead, Southern Bastards, what have you. A bunch of them. I don't know. I read a lot. I try to keep up with those. Lately, I've been getting a little behind because I've been so busy. But
What was the favorite thing you read this week or lately?
oh my god, I don't even know what I read this week. I can't remember. I think the last thing I just read was the second issue of Paper Girls.
Oh.
I enjoyed that.
And who's the creative team on that?
Oh, it's Brian K. Vaughan, Cliff Chang, and Matt Wilson.
Okay, right on. Yeah, we stand on guard. I love that from Vaughn also. Can you you said Paper Girl, right? Can you give us the rundown? I haven't checked that out, so I'm just a little interested on what it's about.
I don't know exactly yet. We just started, so
Doesn't that happen with Vaughn sometimes?
well, that's fine. Like I trust him, so it's like set in the '80s. It's like this group of young girls, and they're paper girls, and they're delivering newspapers. And then at the end of the first issue, some weird things happen, and haven't quite been explained yet.
That's how I feel about Phonogram too. I read it and I'm like, I have no idea what is going on, but it's so interesting and beautiful. Yeah, Vaughn really has that kind of talent to like pull you in, even though the story is completely out there and weird.
I've really been disappointed in stuff, so I just kind of, he's got a book coming out, I'll buy it.
Yeah, that guy just makes so much money off of his just namesake at this point. So Tamara, before we let you and Steven go, what if you could work on any comic or write any or create or draw any of the current superheroes, like from the Marvel or DC stable, who would you pick?
Oh, God. There's a bunch I'd be okay with doing, but I think Swamp Thing is one I would love to do at some point.
Oh, I love that answer. Can you give us a little kind of explanation why?
I don't know. I've had a weird. I just really liked Swamp Thing since I was a kid. I got into it from terrible things like the movies and the USA like TV show from the '90s. But then when I was older, like I discovered like the actual original comics and then the Alan Moore stuff, which I really love. And then I liked the more recent series that DC had done that just ended not too long ago. I don't know. I just always really liked the character.
That's a fantastic choice. We ask everyone that comes on that question, and no one's ever said Swamp Thing, and I appreciate. Yeah, it's a great character, and I think Snyder's last run was fantastic, but I always think that he's kind of due for another like great comic book run. So yeah, and I think you would nail the coloring and art on it. So good luck, and hopefully you can achieve that someday. Steven, same question. If you could draw or write or create any kind of the current superheroes in the DC Marvel stable, who would you pick?
That's hard. I mean, I've always kind of wondered about Moon Knight because he's kind of like a fake Batman, like a Batman knockoff. But I've always wondered about him, so that would kind of be fun to work on.
I would recommend Warren Ellis's run. He just did a 6-issue run of Moon Knight. It's probably one of the best comic book runs I've read in the past 5 years. It's perfect, and each issue is a single kind of like one-shot like story, but it all comes together at the very end. It's fantastic, and yeah, you're right. It's a great character.
I mean, he feels similar enough, but underused that like you could do something new with him,
Yeah. You could totally reinvent him kind of every time you did a new arc because he's strange too. He has the multiple personality thing going on, so yeah, you can really kind of have fun with that character. I think it's an awesome choice. And once again, a character not a lot of people have mentioned before, so I think that's awesome. Well, thank you, Stephen and Tamara, so much for coming on. Stephen, where can we find you and your art and your books and all that good stuff?
I'm on Twitter. I am Stickcoom on Twitter, or you can just search my name. I have a DeviantArt account, which I every once in a blue moon update. I'm on Pixiv, which is Japan, also Kinami, which is Japan. And my books, you just type my name in Amazon, they'll pop up. But Wayward's the best one. And
Way to sell it.
if you're looking for like all sorts of Wayward awesomeness, you know, we got a lot of stuff out, so I hope everybody can check it out.
Yeah, and I know we said it 100 times already, but your art on that book is just spot on perfect, along with the coloring that Tamara is doing, and I love really just the style and kind of vision that you guys are going for with that book. And I think you're right; it was kind of a smart choice to leave out kind of all the clutter that does kind of clutter the streets of Japan, that signage and all that stuff, and you allow kind of the beauty of Japan to really shine through, and it shows through each page. So thank you so much, and thank you for coming on. We really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you.
Tamara, where can we find you and all your lovely work?
Sure. The only thing I really update anymore is my Twitter. It's Bonvillain. And I'm easy to find. I'm the only one with that name, so.
Yeah, the coolest name ever, by the way, if I didn't say that already. Well, thank you so much, guys, for coming on. We really appreciate it. Like I said, same goes for you. Anytime you want to come on and promote a book or just talk about yourselves, please let me know, and we'll get you back on the show. Thank you guys for coming on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we'll talk to you guys later, and we'll get back on with Steven or Tyler and Tyler and Anthony. Anthony, what comic books are you reading lately?
You know, right now it's been a little slow for me. I have this little sticky note I always keep up on my desktop. Let's see. Black Science has been really good. It just came off a hiatus, so I'm really looking forward to that picking steam up again. Manifest Destiny.
That's been one of my favorite books that I've preached on this podcast since we started.
What?
Black Science. I love it to death. And Steve, tell me if this is an apt description, because people always ask me, and I'm sure you get this a lot too, like, oh, I want to start reading comics, like, what should I read? And I always say, Black Science, especially if you like that show Sliders, but just imagine it on acid. Like that is a perfect description for that comic, and it's quite amazing. It's perfect remender as well. I really enjoy it.
Another one that got mentioned was Paper Girls. I would recommend picking it up.
Do you know what it's about?
It's only an issue 2, so it's still very early in the process. They've done a great job of setting up these 2 issues to really lead up to something that at least feels big. Plus, it's set in Cleveland, so, hometown.
Do you know what Phonogram's about? Because I'm having trouble with that one, too.
No, I haven't read Phonogram. It's one I've seen on the shelf, but I've constantly gone, maybe next time.
Yeah, I think I keep getting it mixed up with Moonbeam City, because they have the same art style, so I keep getting the 2 mixed up in my head. Mm-hmm. Anyone familiar with Moonbeam City? No? Okay, moving on. So, anything else, Anthony, that you've been reading this week that you want to kind of recommend and get out there or review a little bit?
I actually just read the most recent Captain America. I don't know if you guys are caught up with that. Sam Wilson's most recent adventure.
Yes.
It's an emphatic yes from Tyler.
Since this is my first time, I'll ask this as a preface. How much of a line do you guys? How much?
No, you can give a full review. So yeah, so go for it. Yeah.
I love the throwback to Capwolf. When I first got into comics, Cap's my favorite hero, Steve Rogers, I should say. And so that's when I first started collecting, and I went back to like which one, what comic was released when I was born, and I was so bummed out to see this Capwolf issue, and it's the one that was released my first month. And I can see it kind of come full circle again and be released. I was like, oh man, Capwolf again. But I think it was fun. I think they played with it in a really interesting way. Definitely diverted from the original story.
I got really quiet there. Sorry. Do you prefer the Sam Wilson Captain America? Like that's my problem. Like I I'm with you. Captain America has always been my favorite character. He was the first comics I started reading. So when they moved to Sam Wilson, I do enjoy it, and I really like the commentary that he's kind of doing. But I also don't like what they're doing with Steven Rogers in the MCU anymore.
Yeah, I mean, they've been partners and almost best friends for, what, 40 years or something? So to see them suddenly deviate, I think is a really stark difference to what we've seen, I mean, in a historical sense.
Do we know why they're like at odds right now? Or is that one of those things that's happened in the 8 months prior to Secret Wars and they're kind of like teasing it out?
It's within the 8 months that happened.
Okay.
Yeah, I really like the book so far. I like the commentary that Nick Spencer's doing on it. I like that it made Fox News mad. I don't like Misty Knight's outfit. Like, I like it, but I don't get the weird, like, stomach not being covered fully.
Can you show it? I mean, I don't have the visual in my head. Oh, thanks. Yeah. Yeah, it didn't make much sense.
Yeah, like okay, look, I mean, I get it. She's an attractive woman, and I can sort of give you leeway for having her, the chest uncovered, but like the stomach, it doesn't make sense. Like,
does she still have the metal arm?
Yeah, she does.
At least she still has that.
Her role in the comic is really weird because she keeps going, well, I'm not a sidekick, well, I'm not a sidekick, well, I'm not a sidekick. But at the same time, I think really fills the sidekick role. So I'm like, what are they doing with her?
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know. It looks like Cap and Iron Man are gonna cross over actually, because Cap actually showed up in this most recent Ant-Man issue, which Spencer is also writing. So that'd be interesting to see.
Cool. So I'll just go right into you, Tyler. What are you reading this week?
Thor.
It's only issue 1 though, right? Did that come out? That came out last week. This new Tuesday thing is throwing me off of my comic book reading. So I guess technically that was this week.
Yeah, I mean, it was the first issue. It's great. Spoilers if you haven't read, if you don't know who the new Thor is, because it spoils it right in the first pages.
Yeah, they're not.
And it comes with this like
hiding behind it anymore.
Cover. And also, one of the great things about this cover is that Thor is in the booty shot, and it's not a woman in the booty shot, which is great. Yeah, I mean, this is basically a continuation of what pre-Secret Wars was doing, and is it okay to go like full spoiler on this?
Yeah, because I want to talk about it too, and I know you're going to talk about it, so go right ahead.
Did you read any Invasion of Asgard, the Loki run?
I read the very beginning of it, and then I kind of fell off, after probably issue 4 or 5.
Okay, so he's on the last page, and like he's going to join this council of evil or whatever.
Wait, hold on. Back to his appearance. One of the pet peeves I have with comics is doing now, and I don't know why they have to do this. Why do they need to make every single character look like the movie counterpart? Like, I think it would have been maybe they didn't do this on purpose, but I think it would have been way more interesting if he would have been a girl. Like, if he would have came back as a girl again.
Okay, well, hang on. Can I?
Okay, go. So yeah,
talk about
go ahead.
Asgard?
Yeah.
Okay. So in that run, he basically he goes through a gigantic metamorphosis, and he becomes the god of stories. And in that, he's extremely gender fluid. Like he puts a shirt on, and suddenly he's a female now. Like he's very fluid about that.
Right.
And by the end of Agent of Asgard, he survives the incursions. He's one of the very few that actually survive the incursions. And since he's the god of stories, he basically he knows that Battleworld exists, like in the last issue, he knows that Battle exists, and like he talks about it, and he tells his like companion Verity Willis, let's just skip all that and go straight to where things actually get interesting, and he goes into the now, I guess. And it was very like they basically painted Loki as that as going to be very like chaotic neutral, like not really being involved in anything, but still, just watching everything and seeing what happens since he's the god of stories now. But yeah, like this last page, like I'm worried that they're just gonna like make sure that never happened again, and like because I don't want him to be just a bad guy. I want him to still have that nuance that Al Ewing brought to Loki, and yeah, also when he became God of Stories, his appearance changed. So that's why he's very stubbly right now.
Yeah. And it's like, oh, I'm just gonna draw Tom Hiddleston now. Okay, I get it, I guess. Yeah, I agree with you. I really liked his character building in that Age of Asgard kind of arc that he had, and I really hope they don't throw it away. And I don't think Jason Aaron will. This seems a little too like on the choreographed or on the nose to be like, oh, he's a bad guy again. I really think that he's gonna come back and kind of switch allegiances. So hopefully that'll be the case.
Yeah. Yep. Oh, and then I also read Red Thorn, who I interviewed the writer David Bailey on our website. You can go check that out right now at the GWW.com. And it was a really strong first issue. It's about this woman named, oh my gosh, I can't remember how like you actually say Isla, I want to say, investigating the death of her sister. And like she goes around looking around Glasgow for clues and stuff, and she goes to a club, she meets a guy, and then the guy takes her on a tour of Glasgow, or his Glasgow, and also Isla has a very interesting power. She can draw things and then they come to life. Like there's a few pages in here where she talks about she drew like a woman, and she came to life, and she spent time at her school for a semester until the drawing who came to life killed someone. And at the end of the issue, you see this character, who's been trapped under Glasgow for thousands of years, Red Thorn, and it's a very, very he looks very good.
Oh, the nasty, dirty things I would do if I had that power.
Oh, the drawing power.
Yeah.
Oh, Casey.
I'd be a terrible, tormented youth.
You are already.
Yeah, that interview was super interesting, and I'm glad that you got to do it, because I think that's a book that needs attention, because once again, it's something new and different, and how often do you get to kind of immerse yourself in Scottish lore? You know what I mean? Like, not very often. So.
Yeah, and I mean, I know a little bit about like these creatures that they're gonna talk about, but I don't know that much, and I'm really interested to see like how David and Megan, who's the artist on the book, just take it forward.
Awesome, man. Well, is that it?
I also read New Avengers, which was really good. I'm warming up to the art. It's been a tough time with it. This is a very...
Wait, who is the artist on that? It's not Erica Henderson, is it?
No. You're thinking of Unbeatable Squirrel Girl. Which Squirrel Girl is in this. I still don't get why. But yeah, it's hang on, I need to make sure that I'm spelling it right.
It's a very cartoony style, though, right?
Erica's?
No. The art on All New Avengers, or on New Avengers.
I'm gonna say this in like the best way possible. it's very dynamic. A lot of people, it's very 90s.
Yeah, okay.
Um,
That's a good description for it.
yeah, it's like it's kind of obvious where the artist, who I need to say, um, come on, Gerardo Sandoval. It's very obvious where his influences uh, came from, but it's really good. They're valid criticisms when it comes to him drawing women. Um, yeah, I mean, I'm really liking the art. He does action scenes really well. There's a really good action scene, and um, he does like subtle facial expressions really well too. Um, yeah, in this issue, it's basically this is going back into like the Young Avengers time, but Teddy Altman, whose Hulkling is like a Kree Skrull hybrid, and he's kind of space royalty, so like these ancient order of Skrulls are coming to like, you know, collect him and try and make him king of space because something's happening with them and they need him for whatever purpose. Meanwhile, this weird Cthulhu monster thing is like gathering forces for whatever reason. And you know, there's I think they're gonna do something with that demiurge thing that was in the Gillen McKelvey run, because Billy is like an uber powerful magic user. Well, he's a reality warper, and like he's on the same level as his mom, who's the Scarlet Witch, which you know, no more mutants and all that stuff. So, and the blah 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 blah, the demiurge, according to that run, is like the person who will decide like rewrite the laws of magic and all that, which is a pretty major thing.
I wonder if it has
Yeah,
anything to do with what's going on in Doctor Strange, because I mean, there's something kind of like that going on with Doctor Strange too, where the magic world's kind of breaking apart.
I mean, I don't know. Like, I'm not reading all the books, and I can't tell you. Like, I mean,
Probably not. Seems like a stretch.
I don't know. I mean, who knows what they're gonna do for their new 2016 spring event that is coming, because they can't get enough off of Secret Wars, because that wasn't long and drawn on enough and wasn't pushed back by delays, and we're still on issue 7, and yeah, fun.
Good old Secret Wars. Well, thanks so much, man. I appreciate you coming on tonight. Let's see what I read this week real fast, and then we'll wrap up the show, because there's not really any news to speak of. Well, there's one news, but who cares? I think I mentioned it earlier, but Star Wars Vader Down. Maybe I was talking about it in our pre-show discussion. I finally read Star Wars Vader Down. I totally get it now. I know the last episode I was on, I did not understand why this was happening, but I totally get it. So basically what happens is Vader's on his kind of trek to find Luke Skywalker. He gets shot down on a rebel planet, and then the rebel planet is now basically out to get him, and hence the name Vader Down, because he got shot down, kind of like Black Hawk Down. Get it? It's cool. It's maybe my favorite Star Wars issue to date. It really shows Vader's power and prowess and why he's such a badass. Probably better than the movies ever could and will and did. So if you really want a definitive look at why Vader is a villain, this is probably the issue or the story to pick up. It's really amazing, and there's this last page, this last scene where he's kind of surrounded by the rebels, and they're like, "You're surrounded, Vader," and he's like, "Nah, dude, I'm surrounded by fear and dead men." And it's really this kind of great moment, and like I said, Tyler, you brought it up earlier. I wasn't sure if it was a pre-show discussion or it was on the podcast, but yeah, it's really something special, and I probably read it again because I really just enjoyed it so much. Also reading, mentioned Brian K. Vaughan earlier. but we're also reading We Stand on Guard. I read issue 5, which is kind of the penultimate before the end of the arc, I'm assuming. And I really love this book. It's quite amazing what this ragtag group of Canadian terrorists can do against the might of the United States and their cyber army. I really love it. I can't believe I'm rooting for Canada to win a war against the United States, but I totally am. And I also kind of really just love the world building that Brian K. Vaughan is doing, and the kind of demonizing of the United States and their search for water, because it really is kind of a scary thing that might actually happen. But so yeah, if you're not reading We Stand on Guard, I really recommend checking it out. It's issue 6 should come out next month, and it's really kind of something crazy and special from Brian K. Vaughan, and I really enjoy it. It's very violent and bloody and a very hardcore war book. I also mentioned earlier Doctor Strange. I read issue 2. Which is kind of, like I said, dealing with this idea that the magic world is kind of falling apart, and even Doctor Strange doesn't know what's going on. So he's kind of trying to have to kind of figure it all out. It's really probably my favorite book of the new launch so far. I really love kind of Jason Aaron's take on it, and the artist, who I can't read his name because it's done in some weird jumbly thing. Oh my god. Do you know who the artist is on this book? Is it Townsend? Where are you, artist? I don't know. I can't remember. But the art on this book, oh, there it is. The art on this book, Chris Bacalo? Chris Bacalo. There we go. Chris Bacalo's art on this book is really amazing and kind of just suits Doctor Strange perfectly. So it's definitely a book I recommend reading, especially as we approach the movie, which is now filming. I think it's a perfect kind of starter book for anyone who's interested in that character. What else did I read? That's pretty much it. That's pretty much all the books I read besides Wayward, which I read both volumes and really kind of enjoyed. But yeah, Wayward is definitely a long haul burn, and I definitely recommend reading it in trade. I think it reads much better that way. But don't expect anything to kind of come to light until the last issue of the volume 2. But it all does, and it all does in kind of a beautiful way. So yeah, I think that's our show. Unless you guys want to talk about the little bit of news that there was, the kind of rumor swirling around Guardians of the Galaxy 2. You guys want to chat about that at all, real quick?
Don't know it, but depending on your
Okay,
time.
Yeah, I don't know about it, but I know that site you guys were talking about it from.
Oh yeah, so how do you know? Is it El Mayambe, Heroic Hollywood, the scooper extraordinaire, as he calls himself, has basically come out and said that he found out who Peter Quill's father is in Guardians of the Galaxy 2, and it's going to be Captain Marvel, which I quickly said, no shit, Sherlock. Like, that's what everyone's been saying since day one. So kind of what are your guys' thoughts on that? Just as a kind of rebuttal, James Gunn was very quick to go to Facebook and kind of call out El Mayambe and said he would give him $50,000 if that was actually true. So apparently it's not true, according to James Gunn. But I want to hear you guys' thoughts. Who do you think Peter Quill's father is, and is there any validity to it being Captain Marvel?
Well, let me tell you about Captain Marvel. Only Captain Marvel in the MCU will be Carol Danvers, if they ever decide to actually make that movie.
So yeah, let's rephrase. I hate saying his
Marvel.
name. Marvel. Fucking stupid. So yeah, will it be Marvel?
Look, I don't know enough about Captain Marvel to know if this was actually a thing that he would do. That Marvel, Captain Marvel. Yeah, I don't know who Peter Quill's dad is. Honestly, it's probably going to be I don't know. And I've decided to stop caring about who Peter Quill's dad might possibly be. There are other more important things to worry about, if Marvel will ever actually make the Captain Marvel movie.
Well, to that point, I think James Gunn pretty much said the same thing. He's like, you guys are harping on the one thing about this movie that's not important at all. Yeah, it's a secret, and yeah, it will be a reveal, but it's not what the movie's about. The movie is about something else, and the movie's not about a big reveal. The movie's about the characters and the circumstances that we put them in. Like the fact that we're all harping on like this scoop or whatever, or who Peter Quill's father is kind of irrelevant to the actual story of Guardians of the Galaxy and what
Yeah,
he's trying to do with it.
I mean, it'll be a plot point, probably, but I don't see it, being like a major, gigantic thing. Like, people were thinking that Thanos was Peter Quill's father, or like in the beginning right there. And sorry, that's not. No, Thanos only loves death.
The theories that are going on are crazy. Anthony, what do you think?
I agree with Tyler. I think that if Marvel's going to produce a Captain Marvel movie, that they're going to take probably the most accessible route, the one that's probably still on the shelves, which is Carol Danvers. To not only open up an avenue of diversity for the films, but also to be able to have audiences go, I like that character, and then approach a comic shelf and see that same character. So I think the only avenue that they could potentially make this work is if Marvel, because there's a lot of name-type casting with the Marvels, is maybe the former Captain Marvel, and then it passes to Carol. I think that's probably the only way they could spin that. But if there's this quick dismissal, like you said, it's probably not going to be the biggest plot point of the movie. Certainly something of interest because Peter Quill's dad is somewhat this mysterious figure, but I don't think it's going to be the big reveal of the entire movie.
See, what I think this is a bunch of dumb interns and executives that don't know comic books, and they're mistaking Captain Marvel for Adam Warlock. And that's who Peter Quill's dad is, because that really makes the most sense. You need to introduce that other Jim. You can't really introduce that other Jim without Adam Warlock. Adam Warlock is considered a figure of light and pure like goodness, and that's how Peter Quill's mom described his dad when she was kind of describing him in that moment. Plus, if it was Marvel, I fucking hate saying that. It would just mean that he was a Kree, and I think they would have, when they tested his blood in I'm breaking this down way too much. When they tested his blood in Guardians of the Galaxy and they said, "Oh, you're something else," they didn't know what it was. They would have definitely known if he was a Kree. That would have for sure been in their blood databanks. So I think what this was is, like I said, I think there's a bunch of people that work in movies that have no idea what comic books are or care. And I think that's kind of what this is a miscommunication, because those characters are very similar in their look and kind of in their inception and their placement in the Marvel Universe. And in fact, I would dare to say that Adam Warlock kind of takes the place of Captain Marvel, and that's why we don't see him anymore, because there's no really point to have him around. Because they are kind of the same character. But yeah, I think it makes much more sense for it to be Captain Marvel, or God, now I'm confusing myself, Adam Warlock, and introduce that character through that means, and then have him kind of be this weird figure that carries on and introduces a couple of other elements in the MCU. But I mean, I guess only time will tell, and we'll all just have to wait and see. Well, cool. Thank you guys so much for coming on tonight.
I know who Peter Quill's father is.
Who?
Huh? No. No, it's not really time right there. I actually know who Peter Quill's father is. It's going to be Mickey Mouse.
That would be pretty funny if you just shadow figure showed up and you saw like 2 ears. He's like, "Oh, I'm here."
Oh no.
I mean, they can make it happen. They can make it happen now. There was a
reality
vaguely Disney character that showed up in one of the Star Wars books. It was like a green rabbit or something.
Yeah, but that was like when they had no idea what was going on in Star Wars.
So good way to go out on the show. So I just want to thank you, Tyler and Anthony, for joining me tonight. I want to thank our guests, Jim Zub, Stephen Cummings, and Tamra Bonvillain. Coolest name ever. So Anthony, where can we find you and all your works, and where can we chat with you on the social medias?
I think the most accessible one, and I'm kind of still brushing the dust off it. I was never much on the Twitter, but at Splash Page Beard, I am following the GWW page, and I think there's also a link to my most recent review of Tokyo Ghost 3, which is super great. Pick that up. That'd probably be the most accessible way to get to me if anyone has any questions or wants to call me out.
Thank you so much, Anthony, for coming on. Like I said, you, as member of GWW, you're welcome back anytime you want. So you just say the word, my friend. Tyler, where can we find you?
You can find me at GWW.com, where I wrote an interview. Well, I transcribed an interview with David Bailey, writer Red Thorn. You can find me on Twitter at CyberpunkWarlock. And that is all the places you can find me.
Thank you so much, my friend, for coming on. It's always a pleasure to have you. You guys can find all of us at thegww.com and at _GWW on Twitter. You can find the podcast at GWW Cape Screw. And make sure you guys are listening to our other podcasts at Scene and Nerd and at Press Any Key Podcast. You can find all those on iTunes. Please rate and review us on iTunes whenever you get a chance. It always helps us out. Give us 5 stars. Gives us a better rating in the ranks up there and helps more people find us. Please share with your friends. That's the best way that we can get popular is if you guys by word of mouth. So please tell everyone to check us out. Once again, thank you Jim Zub and crew, Stephen Cummings, Tamara, Bonvillain for joining us tonight. You can find me at the Comics Kid on Twitter, and we will catch you guys on the Geek Side.